Three, two, one. What is up, everybody? You are listening, you are watching to the Constant Elevation podcast. I am your host, Gabe Rock. Back from my trip home, back home to Hawaii to lay my grandmother to rest in love. It was a long trip. Going to Hawaii from Florida is not an easy trip, but very, very glad that I made it out there. Usually, family events like weddings and funerals, sometimes it's the highs and lows that bring your family together. And it definitely was a bittersweet time, but glad that many of the family made it back home to pay our respects to our grandmother, and it was awesome. Overall, the trip was really, really good. I'm not going to share those stories. Those stories are going to stay with my family, but I definitely want to share one story that actually cemented a little bit more about just the legacy that I'm a part of. And so if you didn't know, I may have mentioned, I'm very sure I mentioned it before on this podcast, but if you're new, this may be some new stuff for you. So I'm a third generation military service member. So my father is a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. He was a F4 maintainer. Him and I actually served for maybe less than a year, not even maybe 6 months. I was in tech school, then he was on he served a full 30 years in the Air Force and then retired. And then my grandfather, he was actually CW4, Chief Warrant Officer, 4th class in the U.S. Coast Guard. And so my grandfather actually commissioned me. He pinned on my butter bar, and then he actually pinned on my colonel, pinned on my Eagles. And then now, based on conversations we had, he made a decree, and therefore it's my responsibility to follow through on this. He wants to retire me. And actually, whenever that happens to be, it could be, I don't know when it's going to be exactly, but it's closer than it is far away. And so that idea of my grandfather retiring me, being that the full spectrum of some of those major highlights that I had in my career, is really, really cool that I could be part of that. So I will make that happen. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make it happen. But it was interesting. So usually we grew up on his house in Halava Heights in IAS, a little bit down the street from Camp Smith. And me and my brother Travis and our cousin Julia, we grew up there. And so that is home base. That is a formative place for us and our childhood memories. And now when I go home, we always spend time in the backyard. It's one of the most beautiful, overlooking Pearl Harbor, Aloha Stadium. You can see all the traffic on H1. It's terrible. You can see the monorail. It's stupid. But I just remember having lots of memories and lots of talking story in the backyard. And it's definitely a cements a place in my heart. And it wasn't any different. We spent almost the majority of the time we spent outside, even on the side of the house in the middle where there's no wind. Most of us started gravitating more towards the corner where you get a little bit of trades, but it was still nice to be home. So my grandfather started to tell the story. So he was a logistician in the Coast Guard. And so he actually told the story about how after he retired, he got hired back. He served as a civilian, or not a civilian. He got a contract job, and then decided to. He said, hey, when they started trying to give me they took away my secretary and they gave me a computer. I don't want to learn that shit. So he quit. And so and then the guy that replaced him understood how to do some of the job, but didn't know how to do the rest of it. So my grandfather ended up getting hired back as a contractor and earned $100 an hour, minimum 3 hours, all travel expenses paid. I was like, wait, what? Me and my brother, what the fuck? What? And when was it? This is in the year of our Lord, 1900 and something or other. That $100 an hour now is a lot. And so that's crazy, the fact that, because he was the only one on the island that knew how to do that. And so he knew his value. That's right, Papa. And so he ended up creating a path for himself. And after his retirement, so it was pretty awesome, and the kind of things that he did. So he imparted one of his, he loves telling stories. And so he imparted one of his stories as far as being a good leader. And that's what I'm going to share with you this week. What is it? I want to make sure I get it right. He said, you need to organize, deputize, supervise. Okay. Organize, deputize, supervise. So as a good leader, he just told me those three words, and I'm going to give you my impressions of what I believe those 3 words mean. So organize, understanding just the components of your team, right? And so if you happen to be the leader, the lead manager, or the work center, NCOIC, OIC, whatever it is, you need to understand who's on your team and what assets that you have. Take inventory of how many you have, what subject matters that they be experts in. Maybe they're beginning in their journey, and so they need a little more training, or you have someone who's been around the block and has a lot of experience, potentially could be very, very super set in their ways. It is what it is. You need to organize and just gather your senses as far as what is going to be the environment. You could be Looking at is for trying to associate yourself on a map. Again, this season is all about maps. Every good story starts with a map. So understanding exactly just your terrain that you're responsible for. What are some of the assets? What are some of the things that you need to be aware of, either internal and external, where your external dependencies are? Organizing exactly just your understanding of the workplace, the work environment, the people you work with. Those to me is like one of those first steps why he talked about organization, because he wanted to make sure that he understood where his influence needed to be properly applied. Then the second one is deputize. So I believe in when he meant to deputize, he's trying to empower people. It's, in other words, he's finding the right people where he can actually understand, hey, so this person actually has enough experience to where they can be held responsible and probably should be given some responsibilities to make sure that they are going to take care of that portion of the team. Very similar to what I'm doing right now, right? And so like we have 4 squadron commanders in our group. They are doing awesome work, and I don't need to do all I need to, once we start talking about something, I'll just be like, that sounds like some squadron commander shit. And they already know they're going to take care of it. I have to make sure I don't try and get in their Kool-Aid and do their job, because I don't need their job. They are very, very, they're going to learn from something, or they're going to execute it to their best of their ability. And I'm always going to be there, like as their teammate, to make sure if they need any help, if they give me assistance. They often ask, not often, they ask for advice. I do a particular job of not necessarily giving them the answer, because I think they already have the answer. But I don't mind sharing my perspective, and I'll be supportive with it. If they're going to be walking off a cliff, I'll probably tell them like, we're not going to do that part. But for the most part, we have very, very strong leaders in our group, and I'm very, very proud to serve with them. And so that deputizing piece, it really depends on, maybe there's some growth opportunity, right? Maybe you have a really go-getter who's stepping up, maybe a junior NCO, junior officer, who all of a sudden, like, we're going to give them something that's actually going to be probably a little bit beyond their current comfort level, but it's going to make them grow to be even a stronger leader after the fact. So that idea of deputizing, I think, is very, very important, just to, empowering people, right? And so you don't want to be the single point of failure. I was on leave this entire week, and I instructed my team, I was like, hey, only 2 people could really get after me and text me about something. And they needed, 3 actually, including my boss. So if they needed to get a hold of me, the instructions were to text me only if it's a real emergency, and also don't text me. And so I had confidence. I had confidence that they were going to be taking care of the mission as I was on leave on an important family business. And they gave me the confidence, like, no, sir, we got this. And so that level of, I'm not going to be remotely commanding anything while I'm attending family business. They need to take care of themselves. And sometimes when you take leave, that ends up becoming a challenge to your team. It's like, how are you going to act when the boss isn't around? And I'm very confident when I go to work tomorrow that I'm recording this on a Wednesday versus a Thursday. I'm going to work tomorrow. I'm just going to just walk in cold and see exactly what has happened over the last week that I've been gone. I'm sure there's been some shenanigans going on, but I'm looking forward to, because there was, right before I left leave, I finished like some pretty, in my opinion, pretty significant milestones in some of the projects we're working on. So I want to make sure that those pieces are actually moving in the right direction. So looking forward to jumping back into the fold. But the idea of not becoming a single point of failure, being able to take leave, go TDY, just have a own personal life and actually move on, is very, very fulfilling. And I try and create that environment, and from the very beginning of the relationship, that like, hey, so we all have our jobs. We can back each other up. It's next man, next woman up. But for the most part, I need to respect people's time in order to recharge and take care of their family business. That way they can give me the 100% when they come into the work. So deputizing is very, very important. Last but not least, supervising. So this is where that's kind of like the seat I am right now, where I am watching a lot of great work happen at the squadron level. And then I am trying to influence the wing commander as far as trying to give him some ideas, is where I believe the team at large, it's not really so self-centered on my group, or our group, I should say, is trying to do and give inputs for the betterment of the wing. And so just understanding where my position is and making sure that I'm going to be supervising exactly what the squadrons are doing. But for the most part, they're very, very self-sufficient, because we have some strong leaders leading from the front there. And then I'll give some advice and tips here and there, but for the most part, I am just kind of overwatching them and contributing to looking at the long-term strategy and vision. So the supervisor pieces, and I've been doing that actually I've been trying to figure out ways to do this more, just my style of supervision. Part of it is I do monthly Thirsty Thursdays. It's a no host social at the Tiki Bar on Patrick. So it's pretty dope. And so just whoever can to show up, we usually share some, right now it's officers. We're going to open it up to seniors and civilians as well. But that idea of just kind of mentorship and in an informal setting, it's more my bag. I'll probably get invited I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I'm also the senior mentor for the local, CGOA on base. And so there's some very youthful lieutenants, and bless their heart, they are going to do their best what they can try and do for the CGOA, for the Space Coast. I think it's including lots of different bases, not only Patrick, but Cape Canaveral as well. And so that idea of just trying to figure out where can I provide some mentorship and just some perspective on the up and coming leaders in the Air Force, right? Again, I have a lot more runway behind me that I have in front of me, and I want to make sure that I'm leaving a strong legacy, very similar to what, again, as a third generation service member is very, very important to me. And I want to leave the Air Force a stronger team than when I joined it what is it? It's going to be 23 years when I commissioned December 2001. I got to always do the math. I get it messed up because I was commissioned in 2001 and I got married in 2002. So those are two things that I have to make sure I get the numbers correct because I enjoy sleeping in this house. So, but yeah, so that was kind of one of the super important stories that my grandfather passed on to me. And I'm going to try and do my best on this kind of platform here, Constant Elevation, to pass on to you. Always interested in if there's any topics that you'd like me to address, if I can help out in any other way, either through podcasting or one-on-one calls or email, whatever it happens to be your bag. Happy to kind of pay it forward and make sure that we're growing this Air Force thing the way it needs to move forward. So team, thanks for everybody. And I'm going to enjoy a little bit of more leave before I return to the office. And then we'll be back on the grind next week. Not planning on going to TDY. I have a local TDY in the month of October. My mother-in-law is going to visit as well. We'll see exactly how the recording schedule is going to go. But we are in spoopy season. So before I go on the way home, I did go visit our daughter Lana. It was amazing staying in Arizona for a couple of days. And normally I'm weird. I don't go into Spirit Halloween or enjoy Halloween stuff until October 1st. I just want to be a traditionalist and just maintain some boundaries. However, I was with her. It was special. We actually went on September 29th. It was close enough. I didn't buy anything at Spirit. I'm not going to take it from friggin' Arizona back home to Florida. But there was some pretty cool stuff there. Animatronics was cool. I watched The Terrifier for the first time. That movie is quite indeed terrifying. Luckily, I wasn't eating anything when I watched it, but that is a crazy movie. Anyways, I'm looking forward to spoopy season this year. So team, take care of yourselves and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.